Good afternoon, and welcome to the foundational track. We just heard from Michael Gruden on what CMMC requires and Matt Travis on what's coming. The question now is, how do you actually get started? And that's what we're covering in the next 30 minutes. I'm Seth Steinman, and I'm joined by three top CMMC experts who will help you navigate your first 30 days. Michael Brooks is the CMMC Strategy and Engagement Director at A-LIGN, an authorized C3PAO. He's a two-time CISO, retired Air Force Cyber Operations Officer, and lead CCA, now helping defense organizations align compliance demands and business priorities into one unified strategy. Kyle Lai is President and Chief Security Officer of KLC Consulting, an authorized C3PAO. Kyle's a board member of the C3PAO Stakeholders Forum and also a lead CMMC assessor. With over 25 years of cybersecurity experience, he's advised organizations including Boeing, Microsoft, and DoD agencies. Before founding KLC, Kyle served as CISO at a Blackstone portfolio company and led cybersecurity operations at the DoD. Finally, Claudine Adams is CEO and founder of Bravera. She drove Bravera to become one of the first C3PAOs, and they've been awarded 9-figure contracts by the DoD. With 40 years of IT management experience, Claudine brings deep operational insight to CMMC. She's chair of the board of directors for the Northern Maryland Technology Council and has been recognized as a CMMC subject matter expert by the U.S. Cybersecurity Magazine. Michael, Kyle, Claudine will cover 3 critical areas: building your baseline knowledge, assessing your internal capabilities, and defining your CMMC scope. Let's dive in. To start, you can't comply with something you don't understand. So Michael, for someone new to CMMC, where should they get started? Can you mention some of the best resources for them?
Yeah, that's a great question, Seth, and thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for the panelists for letting me join this distinguished group, and for all the attendees. Thanks for being here and spending your time to get smart on CMMC. The resource that I point everybody to, obviously, is get connected into the ecosystem by attending forums like this and just broadening your knowledge of what CMMC is. But the really valuable resource where you should start is, don't buy a tool, don't start implementing controls. Go to the DoD CIO website. It's dodcio.defense.gov/CMMC. We can provide that. And there's a wealth of information out there. And start with that site and things like the CMMC 101 briefing to align your leadership team on what this actually is and what it means for your business. The scoping guidance, critically important. The assessment guides, the rules are there. Everything is at the DoD CIO website. That is the first place I would send people to start getting smart on what CMMC is and how they can align as a business on who's going to do it and how they're going to be successful.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Michael. And Claudine, when they're ready to talk to a real human, when should contractors reach out to partners, MSPs, consultants, maybe even assessors? Should they wait until they're kind of ready for an assessment or start those conversations earlier?
So, as with anything that's new, it is really best to start with gathering information as a learning opportunity. So I would encourage, there's a lot of information out there, and if you're like me, you're getting flooded by all of these wonderful people that are willing to help. So in order to get through that, I would suggest that you do talk with C3PAOs who are currently in the marketplace and for exploratory calls. So C3PAOs, we cannot consult, big deal, cannot consult, but we can give you some baseline information on what is the assessment about. That C3PAO can discuss with you what their approach is. And in order to better understand how to prepare, you really should talk to a C3PAO. I also do suggest that you speak with gap analysis folks. Many of us have great partnerships that we can refer you to others. And I would start that information gathering by talking with the C3PAO, doing webinars like this, going to the MSPs just to understand what they have, looking at what training might be out there and available as well. And, I would go to those sources as opposed to, phone a friend in this instance.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. Despite hating on marketers at the beginning there, that's okay. Close to my heart. Kyle, can you drive this home? Why is the baseline education so important?
Yeah, so I mean, this is not an IT exercise, it's a compliance exercise. There are a lot of people involved in your organization, right? Your HR, onboarding, right? Your senior leadership, they need to be involved so they understand when somebody say FCI, CUI, some of the acronyms, say DoD have a lot of acronyms, right? But just the simple ones that, people have to understand. And it's not, for example, if you have manufacturers, if you are a manufacturer, you have manufacturing floor, right? People on the manufacturing floor, they might touch CUI. So people on the manufacturing floor, they also need to be on the same page. So it's very important to make sure your organization, people that handle CUI, they speak the same language. In our KLC website, there's also a resource tab. We provide the free download for the playbook for assessors. So, in the beginning, obviously, you want to make sure that everybody is prepared before you start jumping in, right, to understanding all these details. But that's one way for you to get an understanding in terms of if I'm going to prepare for these information, what are the assessors looking for, right? And based on that, then I can start, okay, these are the things that we should do to actually get the CMMC program started. And CMMC, there's a CUI just on the DoD website. If you go to the DoD resource, CMMC resource, there's a place where there's a list of the training, and also there's the mandatory DoD mandatory CUI training. You can train your organization as a group. It doesn't have to be one person, right? Just like, hey, here's a lunch brown bag session, 1 hour, everybody just listen in at the same time. Then everybody can get trained up and be on the same page.
Awesome. No, thank you, Kyle. And I see a lot of people asking about the resources you shared, which appreciate, Mark, you sharing that right in the chat. We will send all of these in our follow-up to the all summit registrants as well. So you'll have those resources and the contact information for Kyle, Claudine, and Michael. Claudine, we had one follow-up question here, and I won't do this for every time, but Tim asked, they were told your C-3PO can do a mock assessment before the real one, but can't give any guidance. So I was just hoping you could clarify that for
Yes, yes, and I'll clarify that, yes, a C3PAO can give you consulting, but they don't tend to want to do that because we're in the C3PAO assessment area. And if we do an assessment, obviously we can't do that. What C3PAOs can do is a mock assessment. So what's that? A mock assessment is where we take you through all of the loops and hoops of an actual assessment, and then we grade your paper. We can't tell you how to fix your paper, but we can grade your paper. So the go, no go, red, green, and all of the different controls will tell you whether you passed or not. I think it's worth considering that, even though it is a little bit of an extra expense, especially with what we're seeing today in the actual assessments. It's new to everybody. So going through that mock assessment will give you a much better baseline of understanding so that you're eligible to pass.
Awesome. No, thank you for that clarification. And on that exact point, I want to get into our second part, which is assessing your internal capabilities. So I think the next question, now that people know where to learn and who to talk to, is can we do this ourselves? And in that first poll, 57% of respondents said they were planning to do it DIY or internally. So Michael, I want to pass this to you. What are some key questions that companies should ask themselves about if they can do this internally or if they should be hiring a consultant?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one I know folks wrestle with. I think the biggest thing is return on investment and time. I know a lot of the organizations that I've worked with, they just don't simply have the time. They're doing their day jobs and they're trying to keep systems running. The other thing I would say is that the CMMC model, it has some nuances in it. It isn't, because cybersecurity or ISO 27001. You may not understand the nuances involved with CMMC scoping and categorizing assets like a contractor risk managed asset or a specialized asset or a CUI asset and the NIST 800-171 alpha assessment methodology and going down to the objective level. And there's just a lot of things that, again, you need to get smart on and understand, as you navigate the process. certainly folks can make it through the process. 200 companies have been certified, and I don't think all 200 have worked with an external provider. It's an accelerant. It's an option. You should consider all your options. You should look at what you're trying to achieve and make sure you're setting your company on a path for success. Unfortunately, this is going to become an emergency now for a lot of firms, and they're going to need to get ready quick. And the fastest way to do that is with proven partnerships. And I know as a C3PO, I work with great partners like Prevail and others who are very good at getting companies ready and bring ready companies to us for assessment. And it works out very, very well. So again, I think it's definitely worth considering internally. I wouldn't just equate, well, I have my CISSP or I have 20 years of cybersecurity experience to I can navigate the CMMC nuances, because I've struggled with some of those myself, trying to figure out, okay, what exactly does right look like in this situation? Oh, that's what they're asking for. And so again, I think it's just an internal conversation, and definitely consider all your options.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Michael. And Kyle, have you seen any of this firsthand? Maybe companies that have done it internally versus assessors, hired
Yeah.
a consultant.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So as a C3PAO, we have conduct assessments to several organizations. They have done this internally, but providing that they do have their own CMMC experts, they're with the CCP, that's a CMMC certified professional. They're in-house, they're already gone through the training, so they have somebody who are certified that leading the program. So I think it's not, I would say, yes, it's a DIY, but don't do a DIY try and error. Just I try to figure out, because obviously the CMMC, just be honest, it's not going to be a cheap, exercise. You want to do it correctly off the bat, so you don't have to waste time, resources, the money, because otherwise, I think if you just do a DIY try and error and find out too late that, oh, we did not do this correctly, you might have to do it again, well, by hiring another consultant. So I think just be honest with you. If you want to do it internally, make sure you have somebody who have gone through the CMMC certified professional training. That's the minimum. That's I will recommend, because otherwise you're probably not going to fully understand the requirements, CMMC requirements. And also, I think the small businesses, you have to also be honest with you. Do you have the capacity to assign the right people? Do you have a full-time person during this exercise? It may not be a full-time for the entire year, but during the time when you're preparing for CMMC, you need somebody dedicated. And also you need to, just be honest with you, because if you only have somebody that are already stretched, right, IT and manage IT, and then, hey, can you do a quarter of time or part-time on this CMMC? Yes, they may be able to do somewhat of a okay job, but it may not be able to satisfy all the requirements. And at the end, that's your goal, to pass the CMMC certification, right? So yeah, just be
Makes
honest.
sense.
Yep.
No, yeah, thank you for that overview. And maybe as part of that, Claudine, maybe you could give us a peek behind the curtains in terms of a real CMMC assessment. So, people that are on the fence, and they might be full-time, like Kyle mentioned, but what is actually involved? What are you actually going to ask?
So the assessment process, one of the things that I see with the folks that are seeking an assessment is that they're not understanding the depth that this assessment goes to. It takes a deep dive. It is an assessment, and it is pass fail. So either you make the mark or you don't make the mark. So the process itself starts with a phase one, where all of the, we call them the organization seeking assessments or organization seeking certification. They upload everything in regards to what is needed for the assessment. And that would be your SSP, all of your artifacts, and the evidence that supports that. The assessment itself, once that is done and once that is uploaded, your CCA and lead CCA are going to review that information, and they're going to tell you if we can even begin. That's why it is helpful to have a consultant help you, because they can organize it. I've seen some where There's a kind of a data dump, so it takes the CCA just a little bit longer to get through things like, no, it's here, no, it's here, no, it's here. So it is helpful to have somebody help you organize that. So that's your phase one. And at the end of that phase one, once the CCAs have a chance to review everything, they'll give you a go, no-go decision. And it's on on their recommendation. I don't think I've seen anybody recommend moving forward if the CCA says that you're not ready, but there is a formal go, no-go decision at the end of phase one. Phase two is the actual assessment. That's where we're sitting with you side by side, and we are going through with your team, and you are going through all 110 controls, and we're checking the box, checking the box, checking the box. The reason that you want to be extraordinarily prepared for this is because we don't have a lot of time to come back to you for certain controls if they're not ready. Is there a little bit of time? Sure, but not a lot. So you want to be able to go through that and pass. Now, at the end of that phase two, you will get a formal report, and it will tell you whether you passed, whether you didn't pass, or whether you conditionally passed. And if you conditionally pass, there's some rules and regulations around POAMs and things, etc. from that. But the big takeaway from the assessment itself is to understand it's you as the OSC's responsibility to assure everything is there, everything is aligned, everything is organized, everything is ready to go, and to not underestimate the depth, because once that assessment begins, we are obligated to provide a score to the government. So you don't want that to be a bad score, and you just want to make sure that you have what you need to move ahead.
Awesome. I really appreciate that insight and peek for everyone listening here. So now that we know the capabilities we need, some of the expertise we need, I want to talk about our third section here, which is what trips up many companies, and that is creating your scope, your compliance boundary. So Kyle, perhaps you could walk us through how companies should be approaching scoping, where to start.
Sure. Yeah, scope is probably one of the most important things that you have to do right off the bat, because you have to understand what kind of CUI you manage. If you don't have it right now, or if you don't think you have it, just think, if you do have the CUI, how do you receive the CUI? How do you download the CUI? Where in the what system actually touches CUI, right? And also the different groups of people who actually will touch the CUI, what system, and that when you deliver your product or the information to your customer, how do you do that part? You have to really map out the CUI flow through your organization, so you understand what system and what we're looking for in the scope. We're really covering 4 types of assets, right? We call it assets, but you have to cover the people, process, technology, and the facilities. You have to take that into consideration when you're doing the scoping, right? It's very critical, and there are 5 different categories of CUI of assets. One is the CUI assets, security protection assets, specialized assets, contractor risk managed assets, and other scope assets, right? So when you are doing your asset inventory, you also want to mark what kind of assets are these. And if you're not familiar with it, or not comfortable doing that, you definitely need to get help to get this right. If you don't have this right, then your controls may not be lined up. Your security practices there, as you are designing your security controls for these security requirements, you may not have the right controls because you're not applying to the correct systems or devices or tools, right? So yeah, it's very important. And another point is just to make sure that you include all the different teams, the people part, because if you don't include them, I know we actually have a company that we did a mock assessment where we look at the diagram. Hey, you have your CUI scope boundary diagram. It's very good. You have IT, but you also develop software. How come you did not talk to the software development group, right? And that's just an example. You also have to talk to the manufacturing floor if they use some devices on the floor. So just make sure you include all these different groups in your scoping.
That's great advice. No, thank you, Kyle. So in some cases, it may be black and white like that. In other cases, and Michael, I'm gonna pass this to you. Companies may be just starting off or not yet handling CUI, and so they're creating, their scope. And can you talk about some of the advantages for keeping a scope maybe smaller or stricter?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. I think a key point here, and I don't want to overstep it, is level one, CMMC level one. Don't sleep on level one, right? That's going to probably be the first CMMC hurdle most companies come to. It's a self-assessment, 17 controls, 58, 59 objectives, but not a small lift. That's going to be something that folks definitely need to have to even bid on solicitation. So level one's critically important. When we're talking about level two and level two scope, I equate it to federally protected land. Anywhere that CUI goes is subject to the 110 controls, the 320 security objectives. The federal cybersecurity auditors are going to come in and want to look and see. So it's a huge cost lever to reduce that scope to as small as you possibly can. And that's not to say then you can gradually increase it as you validate business requirements, right? Oh, we need 3 more users. Oh, we need another site. Oh, we need to include our development team. And that's to Kyle's point, where it's extremely important to understand that CUI data flow, because that's going to drive where you're operating. I talk to a lot of companies, their starting point is, oh, it's going to be the whole enterprise. It's going to be everything. Everything's in scope. And then we gradually, we move down, and then we figure out we've got a very segmented portion of the network in an enclave where it's 4 users, and that's where they landed. And they're fully accredited, and they're ready to go, and it's something they can maintain. So yeah, don't take the scoping lightly. Again, go to the resources, look at the scoping guide, but have those business conversations. Don't start implementing controls until you really understand, where does this data flow? Who's touching it? Do they need to touch it? Does it need to be in scope? And then if so, let's apply the controls and make sure we're protecting the data in accordance with our contractual responsibilities.
And that smaller scope can really help save time and money. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, it certainly can. And I just picked up something in the chat. You can have different scopes for level one and level two. There's different ways to approach that. Level one can have its own scope, and level two can have a segmented scope, or you can have the same scope for both. Again, you have the latitude within the scoping guidance to do that. But a lot of companies are going to be preparing for level two and focused on level two, and I'm getting ready for level two. And oh, I have a level one requirement. What? I aren't I doing level one if I'm already doing level two? And it's like, well, yeah, but you have to say how you're doing that. So again, don't overlook level one as you're getting ready for level two.
Awesome. No, thank you for that, Michael. Really appreciate it. Claudine, I'm going to ask you to take the other side of that argument. Where should companies be careful of maybe simplifying or over limiting the scope? Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So, and I think, Michael, you outlined it well, where you're processing your CUI. But what I am finding with some companies in trying to reduce the scope is they're not necessarily taking into consideration everywhere where they are processing CUI. As an example, we normally are talking with the IT group in an organization, and they may not even be aware of everywhere, finance, business development, etc. Others are processing CUI. So asking that question first of your own organization is very helpful to understand where the scope should be. And what I'm seeing is sometimes people are trying to, well, my finance doesn't really touch it. Well, once in a while they might get, well, they either are or they're not. So if they are, it means they're in scope. So making sure that your scope is comprehensive enough is critical, because otherwise you're wasting a lot of time. And I have seen where we have gone in and looked at scoping documents and said, yeah, now you're going to have to redo things. And it means you're going to need to redo your SSP, and you're going to have to include more. So while you don't necessarily need the entire enterprise, it is actually very important that you give a comprehensive enough scope so that CCA can really start the assessment and move ahead with the project.
Awesome. No, I really appreciate that perspective, Claudine. And I think the key here is don't guess, right? And if you don't have the internal capabilities to map, please work with an expert. And you have 3 different perspectives here, and I think they all point to the same thing, which is preparation and teamwork, right? And that's the perspective you get from 3 experts like this who've done this hundreds of times. So Kyle, Michael, Claudine, I really appreciate your time and expertise. We will share their contact information to everyone who attended, and so you can reach out to them and their organizations for more help here. So as a quick kind of wrap up, here's what we covered today. Building your baseline knowledge with free resources and exploratory calls. Second, honestly assess your internal capabilities. Get help where you might need it, whether that's because of technical expertise or time or resources. And third, make sure you define your scope with the full team involved. And so my deepest kind of heartfelt thank you to Kyle, Michael, and Claudine.